Chairman Mike Gallagher is the head of the House Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party, is Representative Gallagher from Wisconsin. And before I get into the substance of China, I just want to say, Chairman Gallagher, the Browns are doing everything they can to help Aaron Rodgers get out of Wisconsin. They just traded their 42nd round pick, their 42nd pick in the upcoming draft, to the Jets for Elijah Moore, so that the Jets have more. They just want to help Aaron Rodgers. They're negotiating with hostage takers. The Packers are hostage takers. When will they let Aaron Rodgers go?
Well, reports are that the talks are moving in the right direction. We don't know if it's going to be 2 second-round picks, a first-round pick, a second round, but I'm confident that this deal will get consummated in the very near future, Hugh. And I appreciate the Browns.
And you realize this is the Browns help. The Browns are helping you out. We are giving the draft capital. We just did that for you. So I just want you to remember, I have David Joyce coming on later today. I need you to go over and thank Congressman Joyce today for the Browns' help to the Packers to help them get Rodgers ransomed. Mr. Chairman, I want to read you 2 things from this morning's Ellis Items. Do you get Ellis Items? Do you read John Ellis Items, news items every morning?
I do get Ellis Items. That's exceptional.
It is exceptional. Today's first 2 items, both having to do with Xi. The first comes from John Pomfret and Matt Pottinger. I believe Pottinger was one of your first witnesses. Chinese leader Xi Jinping says he is preparing for war. At the annual meeting of China's parliament and its top political advisory in March, Xi wove the theme of war readiness through 4 separate speeches, in one instance telling his generals to dare to fight. Then we drop down to Orville Schell from the Hoover Institution. I don't think he's been before your committee yet. I think Xi is a pure Leninist. He has certain aspirations to reduce the inequalities in Chinese society, but his real focus is on building the wealth and power of the state. And he views party organization as the key to the goal. Lenin, too, was a party builder, in essence, repudiating the Deng approach. Do you agree with both that, preparing for war and party over people?
I do. First, let me say that John Pomfret wrote a phenomenal book about China and the United States called The Beautiful Country and the Middle Kingdom that I recommend to everybody who's interested in the subject. And yes, Matt Pottinger was our first, part of our first hearing. And in his testimony, he gets at something that both he and Pomfret double down on in this piece, which is that Xi Jinping and other members of the Politburo say one thing to a Western audience, one thing that the denizens of Davos are desperate to believe, but they say an entirely different thing to other party members, to their populace. And Pottinger in his testimony talked about it as one of the great magic tricks of the modern era, and that Chairman Xi would actually agree on that point because he refers to the party's propaganda and its influence activities, its United Front work, as a magic weapon for advancing the regime's interests. And Pottinger went on to say, you could call the CCP the Harry Houdini of Marxist-Leninist regimes, the David Copperfield of communism, or the Chris Angel of autocracy. So I commend his testimony to everybody. And for a while now, Xi Jinping seems to be preparing his populace to endure enormous economic pain and sacrifice that would ensue if they got into a confrontation with the West. This is why the cult of the Korean War has become so popular in communist China, as an example of a moment when Mao risked everything to confront the West, and though the Chinese people had to endure great pain and sacrifice, they emerged as a great power on the world stage. So all of this is very concerning. This is why we need to do everything possible to enhance deterrence and help Taiwan defend itself. And I'm looking forward to joining Speaker McCarthy as we greet President Tsai Ing-wen of Taiwan next week.
Now, Mr. Chairman, I've got to get back to the Beltway to provide you comms advice on this committee, because we had a lot of attention to the first hearing, but we haven't had a second hearing yet, have we? Or if we did, I missed it.
We did have a second hearing on the Chinese Communist Party's ongoing Uighur genocide. And though that day was consumed with the Energy and Commerce hearing about TikTok, the hearing was remarkable because we heard from 2 survivors from the concentration camps in China, horrific stories about forced sterilization, rape, the way in which children are treated in these concentration camps, which is sort of the largest ethno-religious incarceration since the Holocaust. It's unbelievable. And from that hearing emerged a variety of policy recommendations that we're going to be able to run with on the Select Committee. So we're finalizing our hearing schedule for the rest of the year. I would suspect our next hearing will turn attention to the issue of Taiwan. But our genocide hearing is available for everyone who wants to see it online. And I just would really commend the testimony of the survivors that we put in front of the committee, who were incredibly brave in sharing their stories.
I want to remind your excellent comms team, they've got to send that stuff out to me and to other people in little bite-sized bits, because we're dealing with Dwayne here. He's not going to win the spelling bee. We got to make it very easy to consume what this stuff is. I want to ask you about what Pottinger and Pomfret said. He's preparing for war. Now that is going to shock a lot of Americans. You know, they spend $300 billion a year. We spend $800 billion, and they say, well, they're not catching up. They don't have to spend $800 billion. All they got to do is get Taiwan. We got to defend the world. So if you do a preparing for war hearing, I'll listen to all that. I think it will shock a lot of Americans, Mr. Chairman. I know you touched on it in the first hearing, but when Pomfret and Pottinger say preparing for war, we didn't listen to Hitler in the 30s, right? We did not listen to it. Believe people what they say. And do you think that's true, that he's preparing for a war?
Well, I do. I don't think that it means necessarily that war is imminent. A lot depends on what we do. If we get our act together, as I believe we can with the right leadership in the United States, I think we can deter a war. But we have a tendency to mirror image. We have a tendency to assume that dictators like Xi Jinping or Vladimir Putin play by the same rules or care about the same values that we in the West do. And if you examine the rhetoric of the Biden administration leading up to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, you'll see a lot of naive thinking, a lot of utopian assumptions about the fact that something like this couldn't happen in the modern era. And I fear a lot of the same naivety is guiding our view on China right now, which is why Pomfret and Pottinger's analysis is so important, because in essence, what they're saying is that we have to take what Xi Jinping says seriously. That if there's one lesson from Ukraine, is that when dictators tell you what they're going to do, we have to take them seriously. And repeatedly, Xi Jinping has said that he wants to reunify Taiwan with the mainland by force if necessary. It would be foolish to discount that possibility. Now, no doubt, he'd prefer to do it through non-kinetic or non-military means. He'd prefer to do it through what President Tsai of Taiwan calls cognitive warfare or political warfare or via economic coercion. But I think he's prepared to endure enormous pain and loss of life in order to secure his legacy as a paramount leader in the CCP pantheon on par with Mao. That's what we're dealing with here.
Now, Mr. Chairman, last question for you this morning. We have, I don't know if you can talk to the conference about this. I did cover the TikTok hearing extensively, and that was in Energy and Commerce, right? Because our friend McMorris Rogers, Chairman McMorris Rogers, was the chair, and we played that. Can we not stack important hearings on top of each other? I mean, we got Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, even in a 3-day work week. Can we get the conference chair, go talk to Chairwoman Stefanik or to the speaker to say, if we're going to have 3 big hearings, let's do one on Tuesday, one on Wednesday, one on Thursday, or maybe you can get 4 in if you do one at nighttime, which I think is best. But do they ever talk about that, or does every chairman run off and do what they want to do?
Well, quite honestly, it is why we're doing our hearings at night, because there's no risk of overlapping with another hearing. Rarely are the hearings between committees deconflicted. So that's not a bad suggestion. It's something we could talk about as a conference. I
Call
will
it
say,
the Hewitt
however,
rule. It's the Hewitt rule. You don't bring on 2 guests. You don't have 2 quarterbacks at the same time. You don't try and sell 2 products at the same time. You do 1 hearing at one time. The Hewitt rule. It's very easy. We can break that down for the people from Texas.
And the Hewitt Gallagher rule is no acronyms and no jargon in these hearings.
That's the Gallagher rule, and thus far you've lived up to it today. Yeah.
I think I take that point. However, I will say that day, which I don't remember if it was a Wednesday or a Thursday in Congress, not only did you have that TikTok hearing, which was a very bad day for TikTok, and you had Democrats and Republicans both expressing severe concerns about TikTok. Not only did you have our hearing on the ongoing CCP genocide at night, you had the China Human Rights Commission doing an extensive hearing on CCP human rights abuses and United Front work, which was remarkable. It was 6 hours. It didn't get any attention at all, but there was a lot that happened. I ended that day thinking that we just witnessed a remarkable shift in the United States Congress in terms of our policy on the Chinese Communist Party, and it seemed like a wake-up call. But you're right, we should do more coordination across across committees. There are ways in which, too, we can tackle the same issue but tease out different parts of it. We've thought on the select committee about looking at the TikTok issue and then kind of elevating it into this bigger question of our digital future, digital authoritarianism, all the other ways in which the CCP is trying to dominate the digital world and control the behavior of not only their own citizens, but export that model of total control around the world. So there's a way in which we can figure out how to deconflict hearings and all work together as a conference better.
Last question is political. It's got nothing to do with your substantive work. Wisconsin elects a Supreme Court justice next week. Soros and Pritzker just put $1 million into it. How important is it that Justice Kelly win?
Everything is on the line here in Wisconsin. Everything we've accomplished since 2010, the Walker reforms, we're getting outspent, outraised. The progressive candidate has been transparent with the Democratic base about what she's going to provide them if she gets the bench. She called the legislative maps absolutely positively rigged, foregoing any impartiality in future cases involving redistricting or abortion. They have billionaires in California bankrolling their TV ads. So we need all the help we can get in Wisconsin right now. This is absolutely critical, not just if you're a Wisconsin citizen, but if they can do this, if they can prove this model works, it's one that it's a playbook that they're going to use across the United States, and it's going to usher in a wave of progressive governance and effectively legislating from the bench that's incredibly destructive and chaotic for common sense Wisconsinites and Americans.
So everyone, get out and call your Badger buddies and talk slowly and say Justice Kelly. Justice Kelly. In with Kelly, out with Rogers. Congressman, always good to see you. Mike Gallagher. Follow him on Twitter at Rep Gallagher. Follow me.